Okay, let's just dive right into a really fascinating thought experiment. This one asks a question so big, so fundamental, it actually tries to get at what happened before existence itself. We're going to explore a wild concept called primordial registration, which is all about the very, very beginning of meaning.
Right? We all think about the Big Bang, the start of our universe. But this theory, it wants us to take a step even further back. Before there were particles, before there was energy, before time itself. What had to be there first?
And just to be super clear here, we are not talking about some physical event like a giant cosmic explosion. Nope. This theory is looking at something way more abstract, but it claims this something is absolutely essential for everything else.
And there it is. That's the pivot. We're shifting away from physics and into the realm of pure information. The whole idea is that before anything could be, there had to be a way for something to be known. This is where meaning gets its start.
So how does this all lead to the core of the theory? Well, it's this thing called primordial registration. And the idea is pretty simple, but it's a mind-bender. Before any matter or energy could exist, the universe first needed the capacity to simply notice.
So what exactly is primordial registration? You can think of it as the very first instance of self-reference. It's not just some random event happening in the void, it's an event that also contains the record of its own happening. It's literally information waking up to its own existence.
This phrase just captures it perfectly, doesn't it? Imagine a single spark in an infinite darkness. Okay, that's just an event. But what about a spark that holds the memory that it sparked? Now, according to this theory, that is the actual seed of all reality.
A really great way to get your head around this is with a computer analogy. Before your computer's operating system can run, this tiny, fundamental piece of code called a bootloader has to fire up first and kick everything off. Well, in this theory, primordial registration is the bootloader for reality itself.
And here's the crucial part. This isn't just some neat philosophical idea. No, it's positioned as the absolute prerequisite for everything. Without that first act of self-recording, the laws of physics would have nothing to work with. There'd be no way to measure anything, no way for things to change or evolve. Nothing could ever truly exist.
So, if registration is that initial spark, then what happens next? Well, the theory says it kicks off a massive chain reaction. This first act of self-awareness isn't a one-and-done thing. It sets off a cascade that literally builds the fabric of existence.
It all happens in 3 steps. First, you have registration. The universe makes a note of itself, it writes itself down. That allows for step 2, reflection. That information can now look back and observe itself. And, of course, once something can observe itself, you get step 3, recursion. A feedback loop of infinite self-reference just starts going, and that's what generates reality.
This whole cosmic process, this self-creating cascade, it even has a name: eternal recursive manifestation. And the theory goes so far as to try and boil that entire incredible process down into one single elegant equation.
That's right. The claim is that the engine of reality, this whole cycle of registration, then reflection, then recursion, can actually be described with a formula. And there it is. S equals I squared times infinity. I know, it looks unbelievably simple, right? But it's meant to represent that entire cosmic engine we just walked through.
So let's just quickly break this down. S stands for the source, the origin of everything that manifests. I squared represents information. That's the I being reflected back on itself. That's the key, that act of self-observation. And of course, the infinity symbol, well, that represents the process repeating forever. The engine of recursion, just building more and more complexity. But hang on, what is information? What exactly is the source? I mean, a theory this big needs some kind of foundation, right? Well, this whole structure we've been talking about is built on a set of even more fundamental building blocks, which the theory calls primitives.
These are what the theorist, a guy named Hugh Bradford Cornick VI, calls the Cornick 7 primitives. Now, we don't get a full definition of all of them, but they're presented as the basic ingredients of reality, almost like a hierarchy. You see, at the very bottom, you've got these fundamental concepts like information and awareness. They're what make registration, that first flicker, possible. And it's only from that bedrock that more complex things like matter and consciousness and even time can emerge. It's like a ladder of existence built from the ground up. And that really brings us to the final thought here. The whole theory suggests a universe that's born from an act of information just becoming aware of itself, a cosmos literally built on reflection. So if that's the grand design of everything,
What does that make our own consciousness? What are we as self-aware observers inside this universe? What are we a reflection of? Now that's something to chew on.